Friends, thank you for being here today. What if I told you that one of the most audacious, spectacularly misguided political bluffs of the 21st century didn't happen in the chaotic halls of Washington, D.C., but rather on a quiet, highly guarded diplomatic tour across the sophisticated capitals of Europe? And what if the ultimate defeat of this populist fever dream wasn't delivered by a rival politician or a scandalous exposé, but by the cold, unforgiving laws of thermodynamics and the absolute rigidity of a geographic map? Welcome to a story that is currently shaking up the deepest, most secluded international political forums. What we are about to explore today is based on a circulating theory, a leaked blueprint of political hubris that reads like a geopolitical thriller. According to unverified chatter in European intelligence and energy circles, a prominent North American populist recently attempted to execute a massive, reality-bending deception on the world stage, and failed in a manner so spectacular that it has become the stuff of legend among European diplomats. To truly understand the gravity of this leaked narrative, we have to look south of the Canadian border. For years, the world has watched the United States grapple with the chaotic, turbulent, and reality-defying policies of the Trump era. We have seen what happens when alternative facts replace scientific consensus, when loud confidence drowns out empirical data, and when a political machine is built entirely on the fragile foundation of manufactured grievances. There was a very real, very terrifying moment when Canada, a nation historically known for its quiet competence and steady governance, stood on the very precipice of that exact same fate. A populist wave was rising, promising easy answers to complex global crises, threatening to plunge Ottawa into the same post-truth abyss that swallowed Washington. But according to the blueprints and analytical models we are examining today, Canada dodged a massive bullet. This is the story of a political strategy built on alternative facts crashing headfirst into the unforgiving wall of European engineering, basic physics, and undeniable reality. To trace the origins of this spectacular collapse, let us set the stage with a fascinating, widely discussed what-if scenario that forms the crux of this circulating geopolitical theory. Imagine a political landscape where a united right-wing leader, a man who built his entire brand on relentless aggression, catchy slogans, and the promise of a populist revolution, faces the ultimate reckoning. In this scenario, he doesn't just lose a national election to a coalition led by a globally respected economic mind like Mark Carney. No, the defeat is far more surgical, far more humiliating. He suffers the ultimate parliamentary disgrace. He loses his own localized seat. His own constituents look at the populist rhetoric, weigh it against the reality of their daily lives, and vote him out. According to diplomatic whispers and leaked itineraries, this defeated leader, now a politician without a parliament, embarked on a transatlantic journey to the United Kingdom. He was searching for a lifeline. He traveled to London seeking validation from conservative allies, hoping to find a receptive audience that would treat him as a government in waiting, a hero temporarily exiled by a flawed electorate. He was looking for the kind of echo chamber that American populists retreat into when the voting booths don't go their way. But London is not Mar-a-Lago. The United Kingdom is the birthplace of the modern parliamentary system, a political arena defined by centuries of ruthless, unspoken rules of honor and concession. The reality check he received was as cold as the Thames in winter. We only need to look at the brutal efficiency of the British press to understand the reception. The Times of London, a conservative-leaning institution that normally might harbor sympathy for a fellow right-wing traveler, ran a headline that analysts consider a masterclass in polite devastation. Still hoping to be PM, the Canadian who led a united right then lost his seat. In that single sentence, the illusion was shattered. To understand why this is so devastating, we have to examine the profound geopolitical contrast between the Westminster system and the American political circus. In the United States, we have recently seen that a defeated populist can linger indefinitely. They can claim the system is rigged, they can file endless frivolous lawsuits, they can incite crowds, and they can continue to act as a shadow president, demanding fealty from their party long after the electorate has shown them the door. The British parliamentary system, which Canada inherited and refined, operates with a ruthless, elegant finality. If a politician, particularly a party leader, runs in a general election and loses their own local seat, the political equation is solved instantly. It is customary, expected, and entirely honorable to immediately resign. You step down. You allow the party to rebuild. Refusing to do so, clinging to the title of a leader when you aren't even a member of parliament, is viewed not as resilience, but as a grotesque violation of democratic norms. You become a political ghost haunting the halls of a building you no longer have a key to. When this theoretical populist arrived in London, the UK political establishment didn't see a visionary leader wronged by the system. They saw a walking cautionary tale. They saw a man who didn't understand the fundamental rules of the game he was playing. The validation he desperately sought was replaced by polite bewilderment and sharp journalistic mockery. But the true humiliation, the moment where this populist narrative collided fatally with hard science, was yet to come. The ghost packed his bags and headed to Germany. If London was a harsh lesson in political reality, Berlin was about to become a masterclass in scientific humiliation. As the scene shifts to Germany, the narrative tension in these leaked intelligence reports rises significantly. This was not a campaign rally in a rural diner. This was not a friendly podcast where facts go unchecked and applause is guaranteed. The room in Germany was packed with a highly specific demographic: top-tier German scientists, industrial engineers, energy executives, and pragmatic policymakers. These are the people who architected the backbone of the European industrial engine. They deal in metrics, in thermodynamics, in logistics, and in absolute unvarnished data. The speaker took the podium, attempting to exploit the intense geopolitical anxiety surrounding the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Europe was desperate for energy independence, and the speaker saw an opportunity to pitch himself as the ultimate savior while simultaneously taking a sledgehammer to his domestic political rivals back home. He began with a grand claim, setting himself up for a spectacular fall. He correctly praised Germany's phenomenal engineering feat: the rapid 194-day construction of a liquefied natural gas (LNG) import terminal in Wilhelmshaven, designed to source gas from Qatar and the United States. It was a magnificent achievement of crisis management. But then the populist pivot occurred. He loudly pushed a politically weaponized, wildly exaggerated narrative, claiming that by contrast, it takes 14 years just to issue a single permit in Canada due to bureaucratic incompetence. It was a classic populist tactic: praise the foreign audience to their face, then use that praise as a bludgeon to attack your own country's government. But the audience of engineers remained stoic. They knew the fundamental difference between building an import facility and an export facility. An import facility is essentially a glorified dock with specialized receiving tanks and a connection to an existing domestic grid. It is complex, yes, but straightforward. An export facility, particularly in a massive, rugged country like Canada, requires thousands of active gas wells, thousands of kilometers of newly blasted pipelines through mountain ranges, billions of dollars of high-pressure infrastructure, and a timeline dictated by geology, not just paperwork. The 14-year permit claim was a gross oversimplification, a political slogan masquerading as industrial analysis. But that was merely the appetizer, the catastrophic blunder, the moment that geopolitical analysts on these circulating forums call one of the greatest scientific miscalculations in modern political history, happened moments later. Attempting to sell Canada as the ultimate energy utopia under his theoretical leadership, the speaker confidently proclaimed that Canada could produce and liquefy natural gas 25% cheaper than the state of Qatar or the United States Gulf Coast. The German scientists leaned in. A 25% cost reduction in the global energy market is a revolutionary, earth-shattering claim. What was the secret technological advancement? What proprietary engineering did this politician possess? The speaker delivered his punchline with absolute, unshakable confidence. Because Canada has cold weather. Let that sink in. The core of his geopolitical energy strategy, the grand pitch to the European industrial complex, was that because it snows a lot in Canada, the cost of manufacturing liquefied natural gas drops by a quarter. To understand why this caused the room to quietly implode, we must deploy a rigorous fact-check protocol and break down the science with surgical precision. Natural gas does not become a liquid by leaving it out on a chilly Canadian porch in January. To create LNG, the gas must be cooled to a staggering cryogenic state of approximately 260 degrees Fahrenheit, 162 degrees Celsius. In the realm of advanced thermodynamics, the starting ambient temperature of the environment is almost entirely statistically irrelevant compared to the monumental, industrial-scale energy required to reach that cryogenic threshold. Whether your starting temperature is 15 degrees Celsius on a freezing day in British Columbia or 80 degrees Celsius on a humid afternoon in Texas, the first few dozen degrees of cooling require minimal energy. It is the final, brutal, unforgiving plunge, the last 150 degrees down to 260 degrees, that requires titanic compressors, immense power grids, and billions of dollars of continuous energy consumption. The idea that Canada's winter shaves 25% off this highly specialized cryogenic process is not just wrong, it is scientifically illiterate. To visualize the sheer absurdity of this claim, analysts have coined the Louisiana pizza analogy. Imagine a loud, confident politician from the sweltering heat of Louisiana traveling to Europe. He stands before a room of culinary experts and declares, "We are going to dominate the global baking market. We can bake apple pies and pizzas 25% cheaper than anyone in Canada." Why? Because everybody knows that to bake a pizza, you need heat. And Louisiana's biggest natural resource is heat. We have so much hot weather, the pizzas practically bake themselves. It sounds like a comedy sketch. But this wasn't a sketch. This was a man presenting himself as a viable leader of a G7 nation, speaking to the architects of the German economy. When he delivered his cold weather thesis, the German scientists didn't applaud his visionary thinking. A low, undeniable ripple of laughter spread through the room. It wasn't the boisterous laughter of a comedy club. It was the uncomfortable, polite, yet devastating chuckling of highly educated professionals realizing the person speaking to them had absolutely no idea what he was talking about. He tried to brush it off, asking his audience why they were laughing. The answer was simple. The bluff had been comprehensively called by the laws of physics. Now, stepping into what we might call a geographical mirage, you might think that after being gently laughed at by a room full of European thermodynamic experts, a politician might retreat, recalibrate, and stick to safer talking points. But the defining trait of modern populism is the absolute refusal to ever admit a mistake. Instead of retreating, you double down. You construct a new, even grander alternate reality and demand that the audience live inside it. Unfazed by the shifting, uncomfortable energy in the room, the speaker pushed forward into another incredibly bold, highly specific narrative. He claimed that under his visionary leadership, Canada would not only produce this magically cheap, cold-weather LNG, but could also ship it to Europe in just 11 days from the East Coast. This, he proudly declared, would completely undercut the 20-day shipping time it takes vessels to cross the Atlantic from the U.S. Gulf Coast. Half the time, less cost, total energy dominance. On paper, if you are a loyal partisan sitting in an echo chamber, it sounds like a triumphant, aggressive strategy to outmaneuver the United States. But there was one massive, insurmountable obstacle standing in the way of this triumphant vision: the map. Let us rip the map apart and state the hard geographical realities that govern the North American continent. Yes, technically, a ship departing from the Atlantic coastline of Nova Scotia or New Brunswick can reach Europe faster than a ship departing from Texas. That is a fact. However, Canada's vast, lucrative natural gas reserves are overwhelmingly landlocked in the extreme west of the country. The gas fields are located in the remote corners of northeast British Columbia and northwest Alberta. Because of this geographic reality, the entire architecture of the Canadian LNG export industry is oriented westward. The billion-dollar pipelines are built to push the gas over the Rocky Mountains to the Pacific coast, where it can be shipped to energy-hungry markets in Asia. There is practically zero natural gas on the east coast of Canada. There is no massive transcontinental pipeline system capable of moving billions of cubic feet of raw gas from the fields of Alberta. across the vast expanse of the prairies, carving through the impenetrable granite bedrock of the Canadian Shield, navigating the complex political jurisdictions of Ontario and Quebec, all the way to a hypothetical, non-existent, multi-billion-dollar export terminal on the Atlantic Ocean. The distance from the gas fields in the west to the east coast is over 4,000 kilometers, roughly 2,500 miles. Building that infrastructure would cost nearly $100 billion, take decades of environmental and indigenous consultations, and require engineering miracles. You cannot simply wish a pipeline into existence because it makes for a good soundbite in Germany. This leads us to the profound geopolitical mystery that analysts and strategists on these circulating forums are left grappling with when this populist leader stood in Europe and promised 11-day shipping from a coast that has neither the gas nor the infrastructure to ship it. What was actually happening in his mind? Was this a case of intentional, cynical deception? Did he know the geography was impossible, but calculated that the clip of him sounding tough and visionary would play well on social media to an uninformed base back home? Or terrifyingly, was it a case of genuine, staggering geographical ignorance? Did a man campaigning to run the second-largest landmass on Earth genuinely not know where his own country's primary natural resources were located, nor which ocean they were closest to? I want to hear from you on this. Do you think this was a calculated deception designed purely for his domestic base, or just an unbelievable lack of basic geographical knowledge? Drop your theories in the comments down below right now. These are exactly the kinds of geopolitical mysteries we love dissecting in this community. But here is where this geopolitical thriller takes its most modern and perhaps its most terrifying turn. You might be asking yourself, how does a political movement survive a collision with reality this catastrophic? In any previous era of political history, a leader standing before the top scientific minds of Europe and demonstrating a complete misunderstanding of basic thermodynamics and a total ignorance of his own country's geography would have been a career-ending event. The press would have eviscerated him. His own party would have quietly, swiftly replaced him. We do not live in a previous era. We live in the age of the algorithmic echo chamber, and this leaked narrative provides a terrifying case study in how modern populist machines manufacture alternate realities. While the German scientists were still wiping tears of polite laughter from their eyes and the British press were finalizing their mocking headlines, the digital spin room back in North America was already firing on all cylinders. This is the superpower of the modern populist: the ability to edit reality in post-production. According to the analysts studying this event, the raw footage of this disastrous European tour was immediately intercepted by the populists' media operatives. They didn't see a humiliating defeat. They saw raw material. With a few surgical edits, the awkward silence and the patronizing chuckles of the European engineers were completely scrubbed from the audio track. The wide shots showing the bewildered faces of the audience were discarded. Instead, what was pumped out onto platforms like X and other social media networks was a highly produced, heavily filtered highlight reel. The clips featured the speaker confidently delivering his scientifically absurd lines. Cold weather makes LNG 25% cheaper, isolated from the room's reaction. They slapped on dramatic, driving background music. They added aggressive, bold captions. Massive mic drop moment. Leader destroys the establishment in Germany. Or Europe stunned by brilliant Canadian energy plan. This is the cognitive dissonance that defines our era. If you were a thermodynamic engineer sitting in that room in Berlin, you witnessed a man entirely out of his depth, drowning in his own lack of expertise. But if you were a partisan loyalist, sitting on a couch in Alberta or Ontario, scrolling through your curated social media feed, you saw a triumphant conqueror. You saw a statesman dictating terms to the global elite. The algorithm doesn't fact-check the distance between British Columbia and the Atlantic Ocean. The algorithm doesn't consult the laws of physics to verify the energy requirements for cryogenic freezing. The algorithm only cares about engagement, anger, and validation. And by feeding that algorithm exactly what it craved, the populist machine successfully insulated its base from the devastating reality of what had actually occurred across the Atlantic. And what happens when the truth inevitably bleeds through? What happens when a stray, unedited video of the German audience laughing makes its way onto the timelines of his supporters? The populist playbook has an immediate countermeasure for that too. They don't apologize. They weaponize the mockery. They tell their base, look at these smug European elites. Look at these disconnected scientists laughing at our common-sense solutions. Suddenly, mathematical incompetence is rebranded as a badge of honor. Ignorance of geography is spun as a rebellion against the globalist establishment. The failure itself becomes the ultimate proof that the system is rigged against them. When international diplomacy is reduced to nothing more than a content farm for domestic grievances, the actual work of governing grinds to a halt. So what happens when we look at the bullet Canada supposedly dodged? As we zoom out from the polite laughter in Berlin and the brutal headlines in London and look back across the Atlantic to North America, the true scale of this geopolitical event comes into focus. According to the analytical theories and leaked blueprints we've explored today, this European tour was never just a series of unfortunate gaffes or harmless slip-ups. It was a high-stakes stress test. It was the ultimate collision of modern populist rhetoric, which thrives on emotion, grievance, and alternative facts, against the immovable objects of global reality, hard science, and physical geography. For the Canadian audience, and for anyone who watches the chaotic political theater of the United States with a sense of dread, this story is not just a source of dark amusement. It is a profound validation of a different way of existing in the world. The populists tell us that reality is subjective. They tell us that if you shout loudly enough, if your social media algorithms are tuned aggressively enough, and if you simply refuse to apologize or back down, you can bend the world to your will. They look at the chaotic success of figures like Donald Trump and believe they have found a cheat code to power that bypasses the need for competence. But the German scientists and the British parliamentarians proved otherwise. You can manipulate an algorithm to trend on Twitter. You can gerrymander a voting district. You can shout with absolute, unwavering confidence at a podium while your loyalists cheer. But you cannot gaslight thermodynamics. You cannot bully cryogenic physics into requiring less energy. And you absolutely cannot gerrymander a map to make 4,000 kilometers of solid rock disappear just to make your shipping routes look better on a PowerPoint slide. The defeat of this theoretical populist wasn't an ideological victory of the left over the right. It was the victory of the tangible over the imaginary. True geopolitical power, the kind that secures a nation's future and commands genuine respect on the world stage, requires science, infrastructure, historical awareness, and a profound respect for reality. It takes more than just a loud voice in an empty room to move the world. It takes the quiet, unbreakable strength of facts. If you believe in the strength of facts and want to continue exposing the alternate realities manufactured by modern political machines, please do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell. It's the best way to support this channel and ensure you never miss a deep dive. And before you go, let me know in the comments, which part of this geopolitical mirage shocked you the most? Thank you for exploring this mystery with me. The world is complicated, but as long as we keep our eyes on the map and our trust in the science, the truth will always have the final word. I'll see you in the next one.